Recording. There you go. Good morning, everybody. My name is Boris Vardi. I'm an assistant professor here at MSU. Welcome to the Computer Science last 2023 Distinguished Lecture, which is co-sponsored by also the College of Social Sciences. And it is going to be given by a very distinguished speaker, Professor Moshe from Rice University. So he's going to talk about technology and democracy, and I cannot think of a more timely and more important topic, given all the things that are happening in the society these days. There are, especially in our state of Michigan, there are a lot of conspiracy theories, extreme views, and fringe ideas that are being promoted because of technology. So technology is not always our friend. All the misinformation that is out there on social media is because of the technology. And especially in our state of Michigan, it's probably more important. I ran to Moshe this morning when I came from this hotel that our votes in Michigan are way more valuable than these votes in Texas. So this is an extremely important topic. There are many ways to introduce Moshe. I start with the graduate course on problem recognition that I teach, and there is a lecture dedicated to transformation of LTL4 to video automata. And students often ask me, how could someone come up with such a beautiful algorithm? So now you can ask me in person. Another way to introduce is, so years ago, I was at the Foundations of Computing keynote talk. And Bertrand Meyer introduced me as follows. He said, if you don't know Moshe Vardi, maybe you should not be here now. Now, I'm not going to do that. So Moshe is a George Distinguished Professor at Rice University. His main area of research is mathematical logic and computation. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including ACM Nobel Prize, ACM Analytics Award, ACM Distinguished Achievements Award. He has written more than 750 articles and papers. He is a member of U.S. National Academy of Science, National Academy of Engineering. He's also a member of the Royal Society of London. He has 9 honorary titles, and he was for a long time the internship of communications of ACM, and I always enjoyed all those editorial articles in the beginning. And in addition to that, Moshe has been a great mentor to me. Every time I chair the conference, I seek his advice, and he always gives his advice. And I always enjoyed your friendship, your company, and your mentorship. So we cannot wait to hear what you have to say about technology and science. Thank you.
Thank you for this very kind introduction. To remind you of an old story by 3 MIT students wrote a paper. The first one had a footnote next to his name, and it says AT&T Fellow because he received the fellowship of the AT&T Foundation. The next one has a footnote, and it says Hertz Fellow because he received the fellowship of the Hertz Foundation. The third one has a footnote, and it says a Jolly Good Fellow. So I want to talk about technology and democracy. Next year is going to be a Euro presidential election in the United States. Probably the most consequential election that I've had in my lifetime. So it's appropriate to talk about democracy here. And I want to start by going back, if I can go to the next slide, which is, okay, let me try this. Okay, it's working here, fine. I want to go back to a book from almost 35 years ago, 1989. This will become clear. The Soviet Union, the Soviet bloc was going to fall apart. The Soviet Union fell apart a few years later. but the Soviet bloc already collapsed in the late 80s. And Francis Fukuyama wrote a book called The End of History and the Last Man. The triumph of the West, the Western idea, is evident first of all in the total exhaustion of viable systematic alternative to Western liberalism, the end of history. I'm told that history got a copy of the book, and he was not amused at all. He said, the end of me, I'm going to show you. So let's see what happened when history was not happy with this. So let's reflect on my own discipline. Our professional association, premier professional association is ACM, Association of Computing Machinery. In 2012, we celebrated the Turing centenary. And Alan Turing is closest we have to patent sense in computing. So it was a big celebration. If you can go find the program online, it was, look at us, we're so great. 5 years later, there was the 50 years for the Turing Award, which is the Nobel Prize in Computing. And you can look at the program. Look at us. We are ascendant. That was the phrase used. We are ascendant. And then last year, in the summer of 2022, ACM celebrated its 75th birthday, 75th anniversary. You look at the program there, you find a very different tone, sober and somber almost. And it talks about societal effects. The panelists will imagine what might be for technology and society in the years to come. And a distinguished computer scientist was not very happy with it, posted on social media. I found the whole thing a little depressing. Why can't we just celebrate things the way we celebrated them before? The good old times. We didn't have to worry about adverse societal impact. But if we want to understand why, all we have to do is notice the date. I put the date intentionally, June 10th of 2022. Let's look at other events that happened in the world around the time. Just a day before that, Congress started the congressional hearings about the January 6, 2021 insurrection. And what came out eventually was the President of the United States was trying to subvert the lawful transfer of power, of presidential power in the United States. Very, very sobering realization. And just 2 weeks before that, there was the Vardi massacre, where a young gunman killed 19 students and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas. And maybe partly it was in Texas. I took it very personally. It hit me very, very hard. And somehow partly because every time I heard on the radio, Uvalde, it felt like they're saying you Vardi. And I took it very personally. It was a very disturbing event. But the reason I'm mentioning these events because they point to a very deep polarization in American society. If you go on July 2022, New York Times had a poll about Trump. 92% of Democrats thinks that he threatened U.S. democracy. 76% of Republicans think he was exercising his right to contest the election. Deep polarization how these events are viewed. Regarding after the Uvalde massacre, regarding the banning of what we call assault-type weapons, among gun owners, this NPR survey, among Democratic gun owners, 84% are in favor of a ban. Among Republican gun owners, 75% are against such a ban. Again, depolarization. And when society is so polarized, democracy is in danger. Because democracy requires an element of trust. We have to trust each other. I win this election, you win this election, power is going to transfer. Without trust, democracy cannot function. George Shultz, who passed away in January 2021, something about these diplomats. They lived 200 years. Like we should have been all diplomats. But he published an article in the New York Times just a month before that about trust. And he wrote, when trust was in the room, good things happen. When trust was not in the room, good things did not happen. Everything else is dictates. And the same thing is true. I think democracy cannot function without trust. And now people are seriously speculating whether the United States can keep it together. People talking that this United States, and serious articles speculating whether the blue states and the red state would maybe split into separate confederacies. And here in my state in Texas, there are people who are talking about Texit. And in June of 2022, the Republicans in Texas passed a plan to transform, calling for a referendum on whether or not the state of Texas should reassert its status independent nation. So for people who may not know the Texas history, Texas became independent and it seceded from Mexico and was independent republic for 9 years before it joined the United States. Now there are people who said we need to, I don't think they want to go back to Mexico, but they are talking about becoming independent again. And I want to read this quote from an article in Time magazine from February of this year by Isabel Wilkerson. How is it that politicians are banning books in a country whose founding First Amendment protected the right to free speech? How is it the United States, despite its wealth and technology, leads the world with more than 1 million deaths from COVID-19, more than any other nation on earth? Maybe China has surpassed it by now. How is it insurrectionists could storm the citizens of American democracy in a crusade to overturn a presidential election? How is it that we actually saw a Confederate flag inside the US Capitol, that a rioter in our area could deliver the Confederate flag farther than Robert E. Lee himself? And my hair stands, my little hair that I have stand when I'm reading these quotes, because it is really very, very sobering. And I think there is a deep question that we must ask: what went wrong? What happened to this country? And I have no doubt historians will spend the next 50 years writing about this. But we need some answers now. We need to figure out what has gone wrong. And I will try to offer some answers. And I'm going to be provocative. I hope if nobody gets angry at me after this talk, I've not done my job. Now, it's 1 hour. There are many other, it's a big question. There are many things I will not talk about. There's something called Nixon's Southern Strategy. If you don't know about it, go check it out. I won't mention that, but it's important. Primary was supposed to democratize us further. It's not clear that they helped. And there is a whole issue of the decline of societal, what we call social capital, the decline of even like religion, organized religion, the decline of union that erodes social capital in the United States. Robert Putnam wrote a book, Bowling Alone. If there are social scientists here, they probably know about it. I would not mention any of this further. But I want to go back to 1981 because 3 pivotal events happened in 1981. Number 1, a young postdoc arrived at Stanford University. But more seriously, just less than a month before that, IBM introduced the IBM personal computer model 5150. Nobody remembers model 5150, but it was the IBM PC. And earlier that year, Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as US president. So I'll talk about the two events. So the IBM PC was a smashing business success. It was so successful that just a little over a year later, by January of 1983, Time magazine put it on its cover. Usually Time magazine put on the cover the person of the year, which person played a prominent role in world affairs in the passing year. They put the IBM PC. You see now the computer moves in, the machine of the year, they called it, and you see an IBM PC on a desk, and a man looking, he doesn't look too happy to me, that man. I'm trying to read this, you can't quite see a special expression, but he doesn't look too excited. The IBM PC was a watershed event because it started a sequence of steps. By the mid-80s, if you're a knowledge worker, you had a computer on your desk. You couldn't do your job without a computer. But the late 80s, you had a computer at home. And the World Wide Web was introduced in 1989. 1995, the internet that used to be a government network became commercial. It was open to commerce. And that enabled Google to launch in 1998 and Facebook to launch a few years later. And the iPhone was introduced in 2007. And now each one of us is carrying a powerful computer in our pocket. Tsunami of technology. But equally important was what happened economically. With the tsunami of neoliberalism that Ronald Reagan has launched, Neoliberalism is a very, it kind of extreme free market capitalism. And it has many, many aspects: economic liberalization, austerity, privatization, deregulation, monetarism, tax reduction, globalization, free trade. And as Francis Fukuyama has observed, that became the only alternative. So, a sentence: the era of big government is over. Who said it?
Bill Clinton.
Yeah, Bill Clinton. Some people think Ronald Reagan. No, it was Bill Clinton. The Democrats basically says, okay, we give up. Neoliberalism is in. It became the standard economic theory. But it was more than just economic theory. So there is a book about neoliberalism by Wendy Brown, Undoing the Demos, where she explained neoliberalism is not just an ideology that favors the market. Rather, it disseminates a model of the market for all domains and activity, even when money is not the issue, and for configure human beings exhaustively as market actors, always, only, and everywhere as homo economicus. And the philosophy was, well, there are about 120 people here, each one has a different opinion. How do we decide? Well, let the market decide. The market knows best. So the market was offered a solution to all the problems that we have a problem in our society. The curse is called the plurality of opinions. And the market supposedly offers a solution. And this idea is, of course, was not new. And in some sense, the prophet of the market was Adam Smith. This is not in The Wealth of Nations, actually, but it's in the previous book, the Theory of Moral Sentiments, where he described the market and the actors in the market. He said they are led by an invisible hand. And so without intending it, without knowing it, they advance the interests of society as a whole and provide means for the survival of the species. So he said, look, markets are marvelous. I'm hungry, I want a loaf of bread, I go to the market, there is a baker, I give the baker at the time, who knows, with 2 pennies, I get a loaf of bread, I don't know the baker doesn't know me, but I get something to eat, the baker makes a living. It's a wonderful mechanism. But taken to the extreme, it led to a famous quote. This is from the movie Wall Street in 1987. There's this character, a ruthless financier, Gordon Gekko, and he gives this rousing speech. And he said, the point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of better word, is good. Greed is right. And this idea that greed is good actually precedes Adam Smith. If you go and you see where the origin of this idea, you go back to early 18th century. A Dutch philosopher, Bernard Mandeville, and he wrote something called The Fable of the Bees. And the fable of the bees is the bees decide to become altruistic. And the story is that the hive collapsed because all the bees are altruistic. That the bees needs to be selfish in order for the hive to work. And so from this came the idea that private vice creates social benefits. Greed is good. Now you may think, wait a minute, computer science, we know something about greedy algorithms. They're not always very optimal. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Excuse me. Now let's see how well it has worked. Okay, Detroit is not very far from here. So what happened to manufacturing in this country? So there is this myth that manufacturing in this country has gone down because all manufacturing went to China and Mexico. But this is just factually not true. If you look at manufacturing output in real dollars, it's been increasing, of course it's zigzag with economics, upturns and downturns, but you can see now that it's been going up now for the past 50 plus years. But employment has peaked around 1980. And in manufacturing, which include automobiles, we have lost many millions of jobs. So what happened because of globalization, that low margin industries have really migrated away. We don't make sneakers in this country. We don't make shoes in this country. So industry moved to high margin industries, but these are capital intensive and they are more prone to automation. And the loss of millions of jobs in manufacturing, huge impact on politics in this country, huge impacts. And if you look at even at the bigger picture, there is something called the great decoupling. So economists look at four kind of key macro indicators, which is productivity and GDP and jobs created and income. And if you look what happened from 53 to 83, you see they all march together. And almost like an economic law. All you have to worry is about productivity, and everything else would go with it. If you increase productivity, the economy will grow, job will be created, income will rise. It's good for everyone. But you see that from 1980 roughly here, they start decouple. And what's happening? Productivity continued to grow, and GDP continued to grow, but we're creating fewer jobs, and income is stagnating. So the tide is rising, but it's not lifting all boats. And what happened in the other, this is to me, if you remember one thing, you should remember this graph. It shows how inequality has gone in this country. So you see that in the early 60s, the 1%, the top 1% of the population makes about 12% of the income. And the bottom 50% make about 20% of the income. So it's unequal. But look what happened over the next 50 plus years. Now the top the last few years have been all jumped up because of the pandemic. So you kind of really, it's all the economic data gets scrambled. But if you go before that, you can see that the 1% is risen to about 20% of the income, and the bottom 50% has gone down to 12% of the income. Stark inequality in this country. People talk about a new gilded age. And zooming in, we saw before that jobs in manufacturing have been lost. So economists look at the labor spectrum, and they divide it into low skill and middle skill and high skill. And you can see that in 1983, low skill were 50%, high skill 26%, but the bulk of the jobs, almost 60%, was middle skill. But the middle skill jobs are the one that gets automated. Manufacturing, for example, huge way of automation. So by 2012, low-skill jobs increase a little bit, and low-skill jobs usually, think of cleaning tables in a restaurant, should be automated. One, try to build a robot to do that. This is going to be very, very hard. What you need in terms of manual dexterity and agility and situational awareness, we don't have the technology to build a robot to clean tables at a restaurant. But you pay someone minimum wage to do that. So there's no economic reason to automate it. Now, the economy has created job for high skill. We need more and more high skill jobs. So there is increase in high skill jobs, but the middle skill jobs have shrunk, have gone down. So this is called labor polarization. And if you want to see how it affects people, it depends on education. Education is a critical factor in understanding wages. So you can see here, if you have post-baccalaureate education, your income has risen fairly nicely. If you have bachelor education, your income is kept up. But if you have below bachelor education, it's particular if you have high school or less, your income in real dollars has gone down. So if you're thinking about the rallies, the Trump rallies, and you saw people are really angry, waving their fists, and you ask, what are they so angry about? Answer is, these people have lost. So a nice metaphor for this is look at The Simpsons. So the show was introduced in 1989, and Homer is a working class person. He has a union job as a nuclear safety inspector. And if you remember what Homer, his lifestyle, he had actually a pretty good life. He was the only wage earner in the family, and the family, 2 children, cars, the good life, even lots of beer. And the question is, this was in 1989. Can you think of today of a working class family with only one wage earner who can live like Homer Simpson? The answer is no. You can't live like that anymore. So in an article last year in The Guardian, Luke Mogelson asked, why did the big lie regarding election stick? Why do people really believe that Trump has won the election? And his answer was that these people are motivated by loss. And there is data to show that if you look between 2000 and 2018, if you live in a democratic district, your real income has increased. But if you live in a Republican district, your income has decreased. And people sense the loss in the actual life. And you can tell them, well, because of globalization, automation, this is very abstract. If you tell your income has been stolen, and it's been stolen by people that look different than you, they have different skin color, they look different than you, then much easier for people to believe that. So this demagoguery about China and Mexico, it's effective because people have a sense of loss. Last summer, the Wall Street Journal asked all its columnists to write a column what they were wrong about. David Brooks, the New York Times tend to be liberal. David Brooks is the conservative columnist of the New York Times, and he wrote, I was wrong about capitalism. The most educated American, here's one quote, the most educated Americans were amassing more and more wealth, dominating the best living areas, pouring advantages into their kids. A highly unequal caste system was formed. So we had economic polarization. Now, how did it happen? So let's go back and dig a little bit into economics. What did economists very often focus? They focus on economic efficiency. So what does it mean? So I went to Investopedia, which has lots of stuff about finance and economics and business. And they define economic efficiency. It means that goods and factors of production and distributor allocate to the most valuable users and waste is minimum. This is efficiency. Free market advocates argue that through individual self-interest and freedom of production as well as consumption, remember, greed is good, economic efficiency is achieved, and the best interests of society as a whole are fulfilled. So free market makes everybody better. The question is, it confused two things, efficiency and optimality. So let's dig in a little further into that. So a very fundamental theorem in theoretical economics is the first welfare theorem. And essentially it says that under some technical assumptions, if you have free market, it will converge towards a competitive Pareto optimal equilibrium. Pareto optimal means that nobody can improve their lot unless someone else loses. Okay? So that's the argument. This is optimal. And this is efficiency. The question is, does it really serve the best interests of society as a whole? This is, remember, that was the claim. The free market serves the free interests of society as a whole. So here computer scientists have something to say. And this was studied by Koutsopias and Parliamentarian in 1999. They look at Nash equilibrium rather than Pareto optimal equilibrium, but the same result can be shown for Pareto optimal equilibrium. And they observed the following. Say, wait a minute. There's no the equilibrium of the market. There are many equilibria to the market. And you can look at different equilibria and you say, okay, how good, what is the total social utility of each equilibrium? So they use techniques for computer science, the way we compare algorithms, and we say, what is the best case versus the worst case? And they call it the price of anarchy, because nobody guides the market. It will converge in some equilibrium. And they show that the gap between the best equilibrium and the worst equilibrium can be very high. And there's no guarantee that the market will go to the good equilibrium. It can end up with a very bad equilibrium. In other words, economic efficiency does not guarantee the best interests of society as a whole are fulfilled. This is very important. I know when I say that, I hear economics and they come to argue with me. But I challenge them to prove that the free market serves the best interest of society as a whole. For example, Pareto optimal means that we should not take $1 from a billionaire to give it to a poor person because the billionaire lost. Okay, Pareto optimal says no one should lose. So we talk about economics, but now we need to talk about the other aspect which was happening in this country, which is called cognitive polarization. And this goes back again to the Reagan administration. There used to be something called the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine said that if you have a broadcast license, because there used to be broadcast channels and they had to license the spectrum from the government. And there was a condition. The condition was they have to represent all the news fairly. So you can watch ABC or NBC or CBS. It didn't matter. It really was a choice of which anchorman, they're all men, which anchorman was your favorite, but they all essentially presented the same balanced view of the news. 1987, the FCC said, you know what, by now we have cable. So we don't have to worry about the balance of each one. So they abolished the fairness doctrine. So now what happens? The fallacy of that was that if you watch ABC, you saw balanced view of the news. Well, now it's true that I can watch Fox News and then I can watch MSNBC and I will get a balanced view of the news. But the answer is people don't do that. They stick usually, for some reason, I don't know why, whenever I go to a doctor's office, the TV is on Fox News. Just Fox News, okay? Never MSNBC. So what we got out of this would become known as filter bubble, cognitive filter bubbles. We start to live in separate realities. So not only you had economic polarization, but now you also have cognitive polarization. Now you can say cable TV, that's not really computer science, that's electrical engineering. Okay, now computer science got into the picture. And this is the internet. So remember, in 1981, I arrived at Stanford. And first of all, the 60s really happened in 1930 in the 70s. It started in the 60s, but in the late 60s, Vietnam War. But the main decade of this were the 70s. When I came in 81, the atmosphere of the 60s was still there in the air. And there was something called the Well, which was very early form of social media. It was a dial-up bulletin board. People went and debated. There was, of course, all text-based, but it was already there. And there are some people here with some gray hair, and they may remember Usenet, Unix to Unix network. It was, again, early social media. Now, in Silicon Valley, when I went there, it was not so much called Silicon Valley there, but still Silicon Valley. Still, there was the atmosphere of the hippies. And a mantra that came out of it is information wants to be free. That became a dogma. Information has to be free. So when the World Wide Web was introduced by Tim Berners-Lee, his idea was unfettered public sharing of information. And it should be all free. And a problem came. The early years of the web was exhilarating, but very quickly we discovered too much information. How do we find anything on the web? So the one attempt to do that was Yahoo, to say, how do you find books in the library? There's a catalog. Let's build a catalog for the internet. That didn't scale. Very quickly, people realized it doesn't scale. So now people don't remember what Yahoo was about, but Yahoo was about the directory. They call it a directory for the internet. And then people say, well, no, we need search engines. The early ones were not very good, but then Google came up with a very, very good search engine, and it's become today a multi-trillion-dollar company. But information wants to be free, and free is a lousy business model. How do you make money? Or Silicon Valley lingo, how do you monetize this? And they came up with a brilliant business solution. They said, how does broadcast TV make money? Advertising. We will do the same thing. So they started advertising. But they very quickly realized that advertising on the web was not effective. TV, you're kind of captive audience. There are commercials. Okay, you can go to the bathroom, but how often can you go to the bathroom? So you end up watching the commercial because there's nothing better to do. Newspapers, they have huge banners. If you really want effective advertisement, you make it large, it catches people's eyes. On the web, people hated banners and just clicked away from this. So Google came up with another brilliant idea. It's called micro-targeted advertising. Let's make the advertisement to the person. How do we do that? We collect personal data on them. So all the people who are worried about AI, what's it going to do? AI has been with us now since the early days of Google. PageRank is a form of AI. Okay, it uses data, it's analyzed data to decide what to show you. This has been going on now for 25 years. And the result is that what you see on the internet, what I see on the internet is different. When you do a search, and I do a search, we see different results. We see different advertisement. Here's a nice little example. This was a journalist done experiment. You say, what is Exxon? And then you see what advertisement do you get. So if Google thinks that if your profile on Google is that you are a liberal, you're going to see things about carbon capture and nice clouds. But if Google has a profile of you that you are conservative, you will see things about regulation, something against regulation. So what advertisement you see, but also the content of what you see is different. Now, in Silicon Valley, they say if you're not paying for it, you are the product. And this was I think in 2019, Shoshana Zuboff published this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Now, it's a 700 pages book, so you may not want to read it cover to cover, but I urge you to read an article that Shoshana Zuboff wrote in the New York Times just after the January 6th insurrection. And she wrote, the coup we are not talking about. She wrote, we can have democracy or we can have surveillance society, but we cannot have both. Because Google knows all about us and we know nothing about them. She said, this imbalance of power is already destroying democracy. So what is exactly, remember, you're the product. What does it mean? Jaron Lanier says the product, Jaron Lanier is a technologist. I think he's working now for Microsoft. He wrote the product isn't as so much as you, is the ability to change the behavior of millions of people like you. And James Blank was an economist, wrote the search engine or the social media platform is little more than a bait to hold our attention long enough to capture our likeness in data. So the internet has become essentially an influence machine. You give them for free your data, and you're influenced by thousands and thousands of little nudges that you're not even aware of. Paul Romer is an economist at Stanford, and used to be Silicon Valley favorite economist because it was entrepreneurship and innovation. And he wrote in 2021, people are realizing that this advertising model pioneered by Google and Facebook poses a growing threat to democracy. This firm know more about the citizens of the world's democracies than the Stasi knew about East Germans. They can exploit what they know without relying on the coercive power of the police state. They can adjust what people see and exercise control by 1,000 nudges. We're always afraid but the government knowing too much about us. But we have no idea how much this company knows about us. So I was just discussing with someone, we have privacy laws for, let's say, FERPA. It's one way we have laws about FERPA, so your medical information is protected. But if you walk to a clinic and your phone is in your pocket, they know that you went to that clinic. They don't need access to your medical records. They know about your medical condition just by saying, what medical clinics did you go to? Something very simple. I partly know because my wife has a medical condition, and suddenly I start to get advertisement for this on my Facebook wall. Now, Facebook took Google's model to the next level. They went from micro-targeted advertising to nano-targeted advertising. Because what is their business model? Maximize user engagement. Because the more you are on the platform, the more you're likely to see advertisements. So they have to design the platform to be addictive. And people call it addiction by design. And people have studied how we are social, we are human beings, are social creatures. What is the most beautiful thing you can tell someone? I love you. So you get this social approval, clicks, like. Every click of like, you give a little touch of dopamine. And so people become addicted to that. They want to get this social approval. So psychologists, sociologists have studied this, and they find out that there is a very similarity. We did a project at Rice. We teach a course on computing ethics, and one of the projects is device abstinence. For 24 hours, they have to avoid all devices, and then after 24 hours, they can get their device back and write an essay. What was it like? And the first time they ran it, I was so out of touch. I thought they would write, wow, I got freedom. I took walks. I smelled the flowers. I had coffee with my friends. None of them. They cannot work anywhere because they're going to get lost. They don't know how to connect with the friends. You know, fear of missing out. And then I read how they describe how they felt. And I opened Wikipedia, withdrawal symptoms. And it's a one-to-one match. The students are addicted to social media. You take it away from them for 24 hours, the devices, and they start vibrating. It's not their fault. It was designed to be addictive. And I want to talk about Silicon Valley hypocrisy when it comes to privacy. So here is a famous quote. If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you should not be doing it in the first place. Who said it? Google CEO Eric Schmidt in 2009. But what he doesn't want you, he wants you to forget that in 2005, CNET, a tech publication, wanted to see how much personal information can you find using Google. They decided, why don't we use Google CEO? And they did Google search, and they published everything they found on the internet. And guess what? Eric Schmidt went ballistic. It's a violation of my privacy. And for years, Google wouldn't talk to CNET after that. Or here's another one. The age of privacy is over. Mark Zuckerberg. But he wants you to forget that when he bought a house in Palo Alto, he bought all the houses around it because he wanted some, guess what? Privacy. So the age of privacy is over for you guys, for the little people, not for us, big guys, CEOs. And what did social media did to us? I think Jonathan Haidt in the Atlantic last year put it to me in the most stark way. The story of Babel. So remember the Tower of Babel? In the book of Genesis, humanity wants to build a tower, go all the way to heaven. And of course, God can just smite them. He said, no, I have something simple. They'll speak different languages. They'll never be able to complete the project. He said, the story of Babel is the best metaphor I have found for what happened to America in the 2010s and for the fractured country we now inhabit. Something went terribly wrong, very suddenly. We are disoriented, unable to speak the same language, or recognize the same truth, or cut off from one another and from the past. Story of Babel, Tower of Babel. So, a couple of years ago, I started reflecting about what happened here and what is our responsibility as computing professionals. And I remember a book that I read in the mid-80s. My son was a teenager, and he was how to talk to. If you have teenager children, you know what it's like. And so I decided to read the same book that he reads. He reads a book. I said, can I read it? Sure. And then we'll talk about the book. And I read Ender's Game, which is a science fiction book. And now, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you the plot. So Ender is a teenager. He and his friends think they're playing a video game, but in reality, they're fighting an intergalactic war. And they win the game, they actually win the war, and they have destroyed another civilization. And at the end of the game, they realize, oh my God, what have we got? We've destroyed the civilization. We thought it's just a game. And I think computer professionals ought to feel a little bit like that. We thought we're playing video games, programming, fun, and now look, what have we done to society? Another way to look at it is to use the Star Wars metaphors. We thought of ourselves as the Rebel Alliance. Turns out, no, we are the Empire. Maybe we used to be the Rebel Alliance way back, but we have become now the Empire. So there is a lot of talk today about responsibility. And some people talk about responsible AI. And I'm not sure what people mean by responsible AI. Do they want the technology to be responsible? I somehow don't feel it's not the job of technology to be responsible. Technology does what people who build it make it do. And a lot of talk by corporation about social responsibility. And I'm very skeptical of that. Okay? I'll come back to that. Ultimately, we are responsible. Responsibility is something that applies to people. We are responsible. Corporation should be regulated, in my opinion. People should feel responsible. So in fact, if you go back to ACM, the code of ethics starts thusly. Computing professionals actually change the world. To act responsibly, they should reflect upon the wider impact of the work, consistently supporting the public good. So if you want to be a responsible computer scientist, there is one sentence answer. Constantly support the public good. And I'm having some debate with people that will come back to Facebook in a minute, but is it ethical to work for Facebook today, given everything we know about Facebook? And I did a poll among RAI students, and here's what one RAI student told me. He said, I expect to have many job offers. Why should I take a job offer in a company, even if ethics is questionable, even if it's a debate? I have many other offers. So computer scientists today, computer professionals today are very privileged. There are many job opportunities. They can be choosing. They don't have to go to Facebook necessarily. Now, when I start talking about the public good, someone in social media pretty much accused me of being a Marxist-Leninist and about to start the Gulag again. So my answer was, let's look at the Constitution of the United States. This is the first paragraph, which I think people forget sometimes. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, not a perfect union, a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So the purpose of the Constitution is the public good. All the rest of the Constitution are details, how to deal with the plurality of opinions. How do we collectively decide what is the public good? Because your idea and my idea might be different. How do we reach agreement? The Constitution is a mechanism for making collective decision making. And in fact, the phrase "the public good," I go back to Benjamin Franklin, 1787, the closing speech of the Constitutional Convention. Thus, I consent, sir, to this Constitution because I expect no better, and because I'm not sure that it is not the best. The opinions I have of its error, I sacrifice to the public good. So he had some questions. People debated even then, what should the Constitution be? The details were highly debatable, but he says, more perfect union. Let's work with what we have now for the public good. So we can try to do it in our professional life, and it's not always easy. Take a very simple example, one of probably the most black and white edict, thou shalt not kill. It's black and white? No, it's not black and white. What about self-defense? Even in self-defense, under what circumstances? What about just war? Which war is just? A highly debatable issue. But thou shalt not kill is not black and white. Even very simple. So common good, the public good, of course, is not black and white. But sometimes it is almost black and white. You can debate about Facebook, but take Uber. Uber now has new management, but the old Uber. In 2019, Jacobin magazine wrote, from the start, Uber's business model has been based on habitual criminality and a shocking indifference to human life. Now, Jacobin is very left-wing, so you may want to dismiss it. But last year, there was a whistleblower who leaked more than 100,000 internal documents, and the Guardian analyzed them, and they concluded Jacobin magazine was right. Uber broke laws, duped police, and second lobbied government, leak reveals. And yet Uber was a company built by computing professionals who felt, well, I'm just a programmer here. And they felt no responsibility for what they were doing. So this come back, we need to start thinking, okay, it's easy to complain about Silicon Valley. What about us here in higher education? So my claim is, if the students that we end up producing, that will go, most of them, the vast majority will go to the industry. If they come out without some sense of social responsibility, then we have not done our job, and we are not socially responsible. So our social responsibility as educators is to discuss social responsibility with our students. They will make their own choices. Okay, we cannot, I don't go to them, tell them you have to take this, we don't have another job. But we want them to think about their social responsibility. It must be part of the curriculum. And I encourage you to go and look at a paper I wrote with my colleague at Rice, Deep Tech Ethics. It was in 2021. It's one approach we use. I'm not saying it's the only one, but I think it's very important that every computer science student will be faced with the questions of social responsibility. And I have to say, it's very, very gratifying to teach this class. I teach logic in computation. I don't get the same feedback that I get when I teach computing and ethics. Here is a quote from a student. At the end, there's no exam at the end of the course. They have to write an essay on their own personal social responsibility. And here is a quote that I just love, what the student wrote: I believe there was no problem that could not be solved by the all-powerful technology. It was only a matter of time before scientists devised the correct algorithms to solve all the problems of the world. Looking back, I realized how naive I was. And that, to me, reading this was incredibly gratifying. Let's step out and reflect a little bit about, again, technology and humanity. So Edward Wilson was a noted biologist. He died a couple of years ago, and he wrote, the true problem of humanity is the following: we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institution, and the technology of gods. I'm going to paraphrase it. I would say today's technology is taking advantage of our Paleolithic emotions and medieval institutions, taking advantage of us. So what should be done? So one, I'll borrow the slogan from BMW. BMW slogan used to be the ultimate driving machine. And now they are being threatened by autonomous vehicles. So they have a new slogan: don't be driven by technology, drive it. I think this is a good metaphor for society. We should not be driven by technology, we should drive it. And in 2019, together with colleagues in the United States and Europe, we launched something called the Digital Humanism Initiative. You can search for it and find it on the web. And we wrote a manifesto. And the key thing to me, is the sentence: we must shape technologies in accordance with human values and needs, instead of allowing technology to shape humans. Technology must be humanity-centered, human-centered. Unfortunately, right now, we saw it is profit-centered. And I have a suggestion. One way to ensure that our students have some social responsibility, and I call it the Lovelacean oath. Why Ada Lovelace? Ada Lovelace was a 19th century mathematician, and some people call her the first programmer. She wrote a program for the analytic engine, and she had a letter exchange with Charles Babbage. And Charles Babbage was an entrepreneur. He wanted to make money. And she wrote to him and says, it's okay for me if you make money, but I wish to add my might towards expounding and interpreting the Almighty and his laws and works for the most effective use of mankind. In a nutshell, for the public good. So my proposed oath will simply take the first sentence from the ACM Code of Ethics: I solemnly pledge always to reflect upon the wider impact of my work while sincerely supporting the public good. And now, a new thing happened. We just celebrated about the one year birthday of ChatGPT. And how do we know that it is significant technology? It was on the cover of Time magazine again. Okay, whenever you see technology on the cover of Time magazine, take a note. And now fear is in the air. How ChatGPT hijacked democracy. And this captured it beautifully. This is you show a box labeled with AI. A monster is coming out of it, and the man is reading the shipping label and asking, who the hell was Pandora? Of course, referring to Pandora's box. And I want to go back to the issue of corporations. So in 2012, Nick Bostrom, a British philosopher, wrote a book called Superintelligence. And he tried to explain how dangerous it's going to be by the so-called the paperclip maximizer. He said, suppose you build a superintelligent and you tell it, make paperclips. So this agent will be incredibly intelligent and figure out how to turn the whole solar system into a paperclip factory. Maximize. And I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the profit maximizing corporation. Corporations are super intelligent because they concentrate the intelligence of many, many people, and they are driven by one need to maximize profits. So a book just came out about Facebook, Meta. It's called Broken Code. Remember, Facebook used to have the slogan, move fast and break things. It's called Broken Code. And in a nutshell, the chief executive and the closest lieutenant have chosen to prioritize growth and engagement over any other objective. So the risk we are facing without regulating corporation is the profit maximizing corporation. So what should we do? I'll try to finish with two prescriptions. One is we have been negligent in the United States in using antitrust laws. And we have let these corporations become, you have now multi-trillion-dollar corporations, immensely powerful. So two books that came up in the last few years, Tim Wu in 2018, The Curse of Bigness, Antitrust in the New Gilded Age, and 2 years later by Zephyr Teachout, Antitrust Break 'em Up. And Teachout makes a very interesting point. Traditionally, people thought that the risk of monopoly is that they will raise prices. But now you use Google, use Facebook, it's free. So what is the risk? She said the risk is to democracy. When you have players that become way too powerful, democracy is being threatened. Okay, democracy cannot allow for companies to become so powerful. And in fact, we have a history in this country of fighting the railroads, of fighting the banks. Industry should not become too powerful. And Kate Crawford wrote into 2021, stop talking about AI ethics. It's time to talk about power. So how do we take the power away from them? Here's something might be even easier. So you may not realize, but there are two legal systems in the United States. One is the normal legal system. The laws are enacted by Congress, by the legislatures in Michigan. And if you watch politics, it's like eating sausage, you know, how the sausage is made. It's incredibly imperfect. But remember what Church says about democracy, it's a terrible system, but it's the best, it's better than all the alternatives. But when it comes to technology, Congress and legislators don't write the laws. Corporation writes the laws. Because every time you use technology, you click a link. And now, poof, the laws have been suspended. You live in an alternative universe where click-through contracts rule. And you did it out of your own volition. So the court says, well, you signed the contract. What are you complaining about? And so there are shadow legal systems. The New York Times analyzed them and they realized if you want to read all the licenses or technology used in a year, you're going to spend 2.5 months reading licenses. So it's not meant to be read. I mean, the design is very convenient, click through exactly so you will not read it. Imagine that they said there are 15 pages here and you must initial every paragraph. Well, then it becomes huge hassle. You may be even forced to read it. But click through, sure. You know, you click through, I click through. It's meant to be this way. So again, to paraphrase, so my remedy is one law, one sentence law. All click-through contracts, past, present, and future, are hereby nullified. Now, of course, what they're going to say, wow, we need laws to govern our cyber life. Of course we need laws. But let's do them the old-fashioned way. Horse trading, okay? Compromises, debates, not by corporate lawyers writing laws. This is the world we live in today. We live in the legal system written by corporate lawyers. Paraphrasing Kate Crawford, stop talking about AI technology, it's time to talk about corporate power. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this. So we have time for some questions of the soil.
For an incredible time. This was wonderful. Keith. Hi. Can you speak to any organizations that are, or efforts that are happening with regard to actually mobilizing and ensuring that the government continues to work on antitrust efforts?
So there are some efforts now underway. I mean, I had 1 hour, so I couldn't go into detail. There are some efforts posed by the federal government to use antitrust laws. against, I think there are lawsuits, antitrust against right now, I think against Google and maybe Amazon. Just when in the news that several dozens of state attorney generals are suing Facebook for targeting, in particular, young people. There is now a mental health crisis among young people in the United States. I mean, it's expressed in many ways. The most chilling one of them is a suicide rate among young people. And there's now lawsuits underway. Europe is trying to regulate technology from afar, but Europe is a large enough market that maybe if Europe regulates, it will force the technology companies to change. I've tried to get our professional societies to take a more active role, but they have a very hard time doing it because guess what? They're sleeping with the industry. And so it's going to be, in my opinion, right now, there is what I call a battle for the soul of the discipline. If you're a community professional, you know, what profession do we want to have? Is it the profession of predatory companies or something that really we're trying to do something to help the world? And the societies, you know, at the end of the day, partly it's financial. They get a lot of support from the industry. Like the Turing Award, $1 billion a year is supported by Google. So it's just not very easy for them to say, okay, we don't want your stinky money anymore. It's maybe stinky, but it's money. So this is a challenge for all of us. I mean, even, you know, how we educate students. Suppose we find out that the majority of gold goes to Silicon Valley. What's our responsibility? So I think we all need to step up and to say, we need to change the world. There's a beautiful, goes back, it's a 2,000-year-old Jewish phrase about ethics, but part of it is about betterment of the world. And it says, it's a huge job. You're not going to be able to finish it, but you must get started. So it's very easy to get dismayed. Well, can I change the world? Okay, so I'm giving this talk. Will I change the world? An epsilon. Okay, and maybe many of you will say, okay, we have to do something, and we'll amplify this. But in particular, of the younger people here, I tell them, my generation messed up. Now it's your job to do better.
Yeah. So, can you talk a bit about the collaboration of the universities? You know, we are non-profit universities, but our governments seem like at least we can say in a mess. So we have a lot of problem to get our presidents. But could you comment on that as well?
So remember what Wendy Brown said about neoliberalism. It's not just about the market; it affects society as a whole. And I look at so I've been spending the last 2 days, as I mentioned, today is my 30th anniversary at Rice University. So I spent the last 8 years at the university. And what you see is universities cannot decouple themselves from the society in which they live. So we are private. So of course we need money. Tuition only covers a very, very small part of our budget. So we need philanthropy. So we go after philanthropists. Guess what? The philanthropists, the rich people. So we have the same dilemma. It's not so easy. We cannot say, okay, no, we don't want your money. You are in oil and gas. We don't want your money. It's hard for us to say the same thing. So you look at many private universities and you say, okay, what's driving them? And the answer would be money and prestige. Ranking has become so dominant that we forgot that that's not our mission. Our mission is not to be highly ranked. What is the mission of universities? So you can go to, I think there was a 1914 statement by AAUP about academic freedom. And it starts by saying the mission of the university is to support, they call it the common good, public good, greater good, to me, they're all the same, to support the common good, okay? And we seem to have forgotten it. We think it's about prestige, about rising up in ranking. And I'm not denying that ranking is important, right? High ranking translates to attraction to faculty and students, but that should never be the goal. I think we should look at, there is a song by Michael Jackson, The Man in the Mirror. You want to change the world? Change the man in the mirror. So we all need to start looking at the man in the mirror. That includes higher education. Absolutely.
question over here, and then over there.
Yes, so first of all,
Speak closer to the mic.
yeah, first of all, thank you for the great talk. I agree with your point that this might be a good long, just putting devil's up. So, the question really relates to the fact, my general question is more on the macro side. So, do you think this is actually a problem with technology? Because what I think is, in terms of so technology and science is like a zero sum. Once you solve a problem, the problem is solved. Essentially your job is finished at that. What happens after that is that that particular problem being solved leads to society and human values and actually people using that to improve the whatever the post. And you can say this for every big technology, like the wheel, the steam engine. None of those problems were made for building. Yeah, of course. So what I'm trying to say is, the market, the free market, requires you, to have this kind of, to use technology and every kind of invention in this. And actually, this isn't really a threat to democracy the way it is built. So I'm saying, even though I agree with the fact that every single person needs to do a little thing, don't you think this is more of a market and society construct rather than a problem of responsibility of technology?
No, of course it is. That's the message that I'm trying to say, that what happened in this society is this combination of putting profits over others, so to speak, and combining it with very, very powerful. Okay? And partly, what society do we want to live in? Ultimately, we are still living in a society. And my point is that neoliberalism was something we adopted willingly, so to speak. Okay? But it's not written into the Constitution. Okay? We can decide, and we didn't always have it like that. We can decide, what happened is that it became dominant for money. People forgot the alternative. You can go to Denmark and see an alternative way of arranging your socioeconomic life. There are alternatives to this. You don't have to give up on the market. You find there's a better balance between things. But part of my point is we technologies get the technology to these powerful corporations. And that means we are also partly responsible for whatever. We did not make a decision at Facebook, but some of my students work at Facebook. So I'm also to some extent responsible for it. Changing society is a collective effort. And but on the other hand, there were many periods in the history of this country connected with slavery and ethnic struggle. What was the good guys? Okay, imperfect. Okay, very imperfect. But again, our goal should not be to a perfect union, but a more perfect union.
Okay, one last question from the audience, and then we'll go to Zoom.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank my colleague for approaching the issue from the positive side, so that way I can essentially not insult them negative. 150 years ago, Marx and Bakunin both came to the same conclusions you made earlier about the capture of life by liberalism, that is to say, the totalitarianization of the commodity. And to which they prescribe a necessity of proletarian revolution, which as the state cannot be used to, as a tool of capital cannot be used to overcome capital. So I question why you chose to stick with what I must respectfully say is milquetoast humanism rather than a more extreme anarchist communism.
Well, the more extreme solution to capitalism would target it. We need more very well either. And there is something called the linear fallacy. Linear fallacy assumes that we all behave in a linear way. We all go to the extreme. And the answer is we're done it like with information. Information is good, so all information is good. The world is not linear. And it happens not only at all. We have to go and continue to find, especially when complexity, all kinds of things happen. Okay? And therefore, searching for a more coherent is an unending quest. You always need to try to work for. Okay, so I grew up on a kibbutz. Okay, my father decided he wanted to go to college. The membership said, well, this is a very good idea, I do want to go. The membership would decide if we go to college. Okay, so, and we left the kibbutz because of that. So it seemed like a wonderful idea, but then I realized it's not something by doing. So the answer is the world is complicated. There are no, I don't believe in simplistic solution. Okay, we have to keep trying, and we will always continue to keep trying because the world will be changing. So the solution is for 1 year, then for another year. But remember, the time is a lot of work, time is short, you're going to finish the job, but you must get started. Okay, can we finish here?
Okay, a couple of questions. So this is my comment is, as a sociologist, I thought this was a wonderful talk. What question would you ask or statement made to a candidate for office in 2024 to draw their attention to these issues? So what question would you ask or statement would you make to a candidate for office in 2024 to draw their attention to these issues?
So I think that the challenge for us is, again, I mean, the market is a marvelous mechanism. I mean, we should acknowledge that the market is a marvelous mechanism. But the goal of the market, would remember, what did Adam Smith said about the market? What was the goal of the market? He said the goal was not to say to maximize corporate profits. So the goal was the survival of the species. The economy should serve the people. This is the goal of the economy. The goal of the economy is to serve the people. And in fact, the American Academy of Art and Science just came up with a report, and they call it the human-centered economy. How do we make sure that the economy serves the people, okay, rather than serve profits? And of course, you cannot do without profits. Okay, I mean, I don't work for free because I'm not independently rich. I need the money from the university to make a living. Okay, but a decade ago, a corporation tried to offer me to head a lab, and we had some conversation. And I thought to myself, you know, I bet I can double my salary by going. I was naive. Turned out I could quadruple my salary. I was so naive about how much they pay in industry. Wow, I could quadruple my salary. Then I thought to myself, I have opinions, I like to express them, I will not be able to do it. I can do it only in academia, not in industry. So I decided I have enough. So there's a wonderful story. I'll finish with this wonderful story. Kurt Vonnegut, who wrote Catch-22. He had a rich friend, and his friend once said, I'm invited to a party at this billionaire's house. I can bring a guest. Why don't you come with me? And I go to this house. And it's the most opulent mansion he's ever, you know, Versailles under Louis XIV, you know, incredible opulence. And his friend said, look, I'm rich, but look at this guy, look what he had, unbelievable. And Vonnegut says, yes, but I have something he will never have. He's a billionaire, what do you have? He makes more money in the day than you make in a year from your books. And Vonnegut says, I have something he will never have. I have enough. Thank you very much.
One comment, one question. So, Shlomo Leventhal, he writes, thank you for the interesting talk. About 30 years ago, Gorbachev, the leader of this last leader of the Student Soviet Union, predicted in an article in the New York Times some of the things that we are talking about, the problems with technology, too big gaps in the society and the result, etc. So, on that high note, Moshe, thank you so much.
Can you save the chapter? I need to reference.
Yes.
Save the chat. I cannot do it for my end. So.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you. Thanks to all of you for coming here. We had a great turnout. About 200 people. So we had about 170 in the room and about 25 on Zoom.
Twice my expectation.
So we bet on that, how many people are going to show up. It may not feel like that, it's because it's 500 person capacity room. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Moshe, for your visit. And have a great day.
That's a great mark. Appreciate it. Thank you. Send the chat, or your students will send the chat. Okay? For some reason, it's just locked here. It's happening. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello. I was scheduled to come to lunch, but I have a program review 45 minutes from now, and I think